the regular meeting of the Planning Commission for the Village of Armada to order at 7 p.m. All rise for the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Belkey here. Henderson here. Shaw is absent. Brand
here.
Patty Jasek
Here.
Patterson
Here. Do we not have Shaw tonight?
he's still on.
Oh, is he? All right, we will need an approval of the agenda. If anybody's got anything they need to add, question, anything else, do that first.
If no one's going to make it, I'll make a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Support.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. And approval of the meeting minutes of February 6th.
I make a motion to approve the meeting minutes of February 6th as presented.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Any public comment that has nothing to do with anything on our agenda tonight? Well, nothing to directly do with the agenda tonight. Okay, nothing said. We'll move on to the site plan of 74980 Fulton, which is the Armada Glass Blowing Company. Everybody has their packet, had a chance to look it over. Did you give everybody a copy of the fire chief's letter? Okay.
Fire chief or fire marshal?
Marshal.
Okay.
Anybody got any questions? You guys want to go ahead and give us a little bit of a presentation on what you're doing over there?
You got your glass things. Go show them those first.
Here's some things that we got off the slow glass.
That's the first class we teach because it's very small, but it teaches you pretty much everything that there is to do for the future. Your next class, you could do something like that turtle. This is a snowman we were making for Christmas, little Christmas ornaments, hole through theirs. And then for they had the bike night at the fair, and we blew glass there, and we were making the glass motorcycles.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we just make whatever we think we can. Sandra's pretty much the local here, and she's a very, very beautiful artist, and I had to teach her glass, and now she's incredible. She got to go to Vegas in her first year.
Amazing.
Show off her glass. Meet the best of the best, you know Vegas. You get to Vegas, you're the best of the best. So she got to go and meet the best of the best and have their blessings, and yeah, so we just make whatever we think we can.
And then we like doing it so much that we want to teach other people how to do it too. So it's really cool. We get to have people come in and with no experience at all. He's been doing it for 23 years. So he started in Northern California. And so he started out as a trainer in his factory. And so he's able to teach people in a fun way how to make stuff that's, we hear people that come in, they say, we've only seen this at Greenfield Village. We've only seen this at Greenfield Village, and now they can come to Armada and see glass blowing. So, and do it too. So that's kind of just who we are and what we like to do.
Okay. And this is all done right out of the garage?
Yeah.
What kind of exhaust does that put off? I mean, I don't know what you guys use for heating or whatever.
We have a small kiln, like an oven, just like they use for pottery. I don't believe this gives off too much fumes, but we do have a fan mounted.
Doesn't put out soot or stuff like
No,
that?
no soot.
How about if I'm walking outside, do I smell that this is
There's
going
no
on?
smell. Glass doesn't give off an odor.
Okay.
There's not. The only chemical would be like maybe unburnt propane, because I use propane and oxygen. But the torch is 3,000 degrees. It's just a little torch, bench mounted. But it's very clean. It's a very clean burning, no smell. We have the fan mounted. Yeah.
Right. How loud's that fan? I mean, you hear it like roaring outside? Or?
No, it's an old fan. It does make a little bit of a rattle. It's not too loud. I do have another fan that I'm planning on getting up there. We're going through the electricity right now. We're just finished up, so we'll be getting our inspection on that. Our I think the rough inspect. That's what it's called. But yeah, once we start doing other fine tuning, I'm gonna fix to the nicer fan. It's new and quiet. But yeah, there's no soot, no smell.
How do you get the color?
Color is colored glass. It's like when you buy crayons, different color. You buy glass, different colors.
Yeah.
And then all of our...
But there's no dyes or anything used in the garage? There's
No.
No. And all of our broken glass we save in containers and make marbles or other stuff. We can melt that down into say a block, and then roll that in colored powder and cover it up, whatever it used to be, and just make something new out of it. So yeah, we save pretty much 90% of our scraps.
What's that powder like? I mean,
The powder's just ground up glass.
oh, just more glass.
It's just more, everything's just glass, yeah.
Okay.
So has there been any issues before between you and any of your neighbors?
Any of the neighbors, no.
Okay.
No, I don't believe so.
No.
The church came over and said hello.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
They were
we came over
very
for a
nice.
It's the only neighbor, isn't it? Yeah.
It was, well, and then there's the other corner,
Just
that
to
back
the east.
corner, there's,
Is there a house right there on?
yeah.
On the east, right?
But they have their mobile home trailer up against our fence, so it
Right.
blocks everything. But, yeah, the church guy came over, he just wanted to talk about our tree limbs are over the fence, so, and they're worried about the black walnuts hitting cars at church.
Oh, so it's totally unrelated then?
Yeah,
Yeah.
no,
Okay.
yeah, they cut our branches for us.
Okay.
You guys. The neighbor across the street from us in the front of the house, she came over and she loves it.
Yeah, she comes
I
over
mean, she
all the
didn't
time.
do it, but she really just comes in and it's just like, wow, this is so cool.
Well, that's her.
Yeah.
Fire Marshal says in his letter that he would restrict the number of students due to the size of the building, and he doesn't give an indication of what he would restrict it to.
He told us that on the final inspection or whatever, he'll also do a walkthrough, or during the inspection they'll do a number count of what they think our occupancy would
He
be.
estimated it at 6. So the two of us and then
I
4
wrote something in
students.
writing.
That's
Yeah,
what
so
did.
we were limiting our classes down to 4 just so we could both be on. Or if I go 5, I'll kick her out. She just sits there and watches anyway.
My only other question is our ordinance for home occupations, which I believe we've changed, but it hasn't been approved.
So yeah, we can't go with the new.
Right.
It still allows for crafts. Arts
It
and
does?
crafts.
Mhm.
It does. Because that was the first thing I looked for.
It says craft classes, but it says no more than 20 customers or client, no more than 2 customers would be present at any given time.
I think at the bottom it says that that can be negotiable. I think we read in there somewhere that that was negotiable. So we were hoping to maybe negotiate for at least just to have 4 classes. Four people in a class. Normally it's families, like, you know, it's usually like a grandma and a couple parents and a kid. It's like families come.
Yeah, we were there, it was fun.
Oh, you came?
Yeah,
You came.
my husband
Okay.
and son and his girlfriend, the 4 of us were there.
How'd you do on your ladybug?
Mine's green, but
Okay.
we're all in the kitchen.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I thought it was well run. I felt safe. It was a cool thing to do. Where else are you gonna learn that, right?
Right. People ask me how did I get into it, and I was actually sucked into it. There's the ovens like you used for pottery, the kilns. I was working in Corvallis, Oregon, right after high school. I'm from Northern California. And then I moved to up to Oregon, worked in the kiln factory making those. And then years later I moved back to California. And a friend of mine heard that I have experience with kilns. And he owned a big old glass factory. So, hey, if we hire this guy, he could fix our oven for us. Which it never broke down, so I was just making beginner stuff. And then teaching people beginner stuff. When you're making beginner stuff, then you teach the new people. So I got used to doing that. Hi.
Well, I think it's a very detailed plan, answers a lot of questions that we have. Does anybody have anything else?
I have none.
No, that's all I had.
Brian, is there something we're missing?
The only question I would ask is, if you have 4 people in a class, do they all park in the existing driveway, or is there on-street parking there?
With that small type, usually people carpool, or it usually is just 2 cars, and our parking, it fits it.
Okay.
We can fit 4 cars in our parking spot. We've had from the past, she told me that the old pastor of the church gave us permission to use their parking lot,
Okay.
but now they have a new one. So he came over and met us, very nice guy, so I'll go over and talk with him and see if we have a car that's an overflow. It'd probably be only a car if at that small of a class.
Yeah.
But we usually fit it.
Okay. I think it looks cool. I'd come join you if I didn't live this far away. As far away as I do.
How far away are you?
I'm over in the Commerce area, so.
I'm from Northern
Down the street,
California.
just down the street, yeah.
I've got
Yeah, but you don't have to make that drive every day.
I've got 23 years experience, and there's people who are willing to buy plane tickets to come get classes from me. So you're not too far.
Alright.
I mean, I got a guy in Washington, in Oregon. He's flying out in April. I think it's late April.
Okay.
So yeah,
That's awesome.
we get people from Flint. We get people from Ann Arbor. We got people
Lansing,
twice from New York, 3 times from Florida, a person from Utah,
Yeah. Maine.
Maine. So
They're-
yeah, we're starting to market on the map. People who've come to our class.
Yeah. And we try to keep people here that come for a class and they're like, well, we came this far, where do we go to eat? And we're like,
Yeah.
well, go to the Armada
Armada
Bar
Bar and
and
Grill.
Grill
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah.
So it's fun. We're trying to keep them local.
I have nothing else.
All right. Nothing else?
I have a question.
Please.
The signs that I had in my yard, I didn't see a thing about. I heard something about signs. What's
We
the
didn't
deal?
present any signs, so you'll have to present signs to the office. To go-
Show you guys what the signs are.
To go through the building department to see
If
if
they're
they're
gonna be in,
permitted,
right, if they're gonna be in
permitted
the yard.
signs.
Okay, because we did have one of those little
Sandwich
A-frame
sign.
signs
Yeah,
and
that
then a
one's
couple
fine.
little ones in the yard so people know. Okay, just so that people know where we're at.
I thought
They
you
get
were saying it was
confused.
just a sign in the window.
They go to the Armada
That's all
store.
we're just doing.
They're like, oh, we're at the Armada store, so they get business too.
So I have a question. The 6.204C doesn't apply because it's a class? They're not customers?
No, I would say that it does apply, so they'll have to be limited till 2 until the new ordinance is adopted.
What's the new ordinance?
I don't remember exactly because we did that one a while ago. I think we adjusted or took the limits out, I'm
Right.
not sure.
I don't think we took them out, but I think we raised them.
Okay, so that'll change when that comes in.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll be limited to 2?
2 people, yeah,
Okay,
yeah, unfortunately.
Each class.
that's fine.
Yeah.
20 per month, 2 people per class, right? 20 per month.
Mm-hmm.
Per week.
Yeah, week.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's
Oh,
right.
yeah, perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Nobody has anything else? We will need a motion, but it does have to carry the requirements between our ordinance and the fire marshal. Still has electrical work that needs to be taken care of
So the
and
condition
inspected.
will have to be that they have to pass the final inspection
Yes.
by the village.
Okay.
And fire marshal said he is okay with his end of your stuff,
Okay,
so.
so we gotta get inspected before our next class.
Correct.
Yes.
You have to get your final inspection, so you have
The
to
final.
pass the electrical inspection.
A mechanical for the wood stove? That was in the letter also.
They haven't done that, that would be a safety inspection. So you should do that too, pay for a safety inspection from the mechanical inspector, just for him to verify that your wood stove is operating correctly.
Okay.
Okay.
That's what
That
they
you have to
said
come to the
they-
office
that's what
for.
they said they'd look at
Okay.
that.
So just for the record, the change in visitors per week is unlimited. So it's the number
thank
of
you.
non-resident employees working exclusively. Oh, I'm sorry.
You just want
No,
C2?
it's just-
you're looking at 2.
Just removed, yeah.
Just removed it.
Yeah.
So you're right, we did take them right
I
out.
thought so. So once the new ordinance is adopted, then you won't have the class
The
limits.
restrictions.
The
We
restrictions.
just go off of how many we can have in the building.
Your occupancy will
Yeah.
limit it.
Right.
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah.
Okay. Do you know when that goes into effect?
We're still working on it, we still got a couple of chapters to go, so.
Okay.
It'll be in the newspaper. It'll be publicized. There'll have to be a public hearing to approve the new ordinance, so if you watch the newspaper, you should see it.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Anybody want to give this a try?
So I make a motion to approve the site plan for Armada Glass Company with the following provisions.
Yep.
That their electrical system inspection is inspected and approved, and recommendation that the mechanical inspector inspect the wood stove to ensure it meets code.
And the class sizes over there.
And this class size is no more than 2 until the new ordinance comes into effect.
We have a motion? We have a second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Alrighty. As long as those conditions are met, your business is good to go.
Okay, they still have to sign it, you have to
Yes.
sign.
Did that guy say for inspection on the wood stove too?
We got a few pieces of paper for you to sign.
Okay.
But they'll have to wait for your conditions to be announced, I think. Come on up.
Yeah, don't forget me.
Have you sign here?
When you come into the office, I'll give you a copy of this with the conditions printed as
So
well.
you got
3
more
copies
to
of the
go.
same thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Same, sign in the same place?
Mm-hmm. And then you have a specific one you want for them? Do you have?
I'm gonna
something
take them
yours?
all until I can type up the conditions.
Okay. Alrighty.
So, the next couple of days, come in and get the mechanical inspection.
Okay.
It's $75 for safety inspection,
Okay.
okay? And let me know for sure when you're ready for your rough electrical, so I can let the inspector know there
I
too.
think we're ready. He's coming in tomorrow, my friend, to help me finish up just a little touch. And then, yeah.
Okay, you are welcome to go, you're on a stay for the meeting.
Unless you'd like to see the
I mean, you're
rest.
welcome to stay. But you don't need-
Most people leave.
Thank you very much.
And you said you've attended one of the classes, Sam?
It was a blast.
Was it? I had another friend of mine had gone, and she said it was just a wonderful time.
Yeah, it wasn't,
Have to get 'em.
you do make the little ladybird thing.
Yeah.
You pick a color, and I mean, it's pretty amazing how,
Really?
I don't know, yeah, it was pretty cool.
Well, we'll have to get them up and running legally and get some appointments set up here. Okay, so that takes care of that one. We're moving on to our zoning ordinance review. We do have the planners here this evening. So I hope we have questions and everything together for him.
Can I introduce my associate? This is Alicia
Please.
Warren. She's been doing a large chunk of the updates on our end in terms of reviewing your comments and providing feedback and things like that. So we wanted to make sure she came along and put a face to that name.
Yes,
and,
absolutely.
hopefully we can, in tandem, answer any questions that you have.
Right. Okay, well, where do we want to begin?
What number are we on?
18, it's like,
Uh-huh. Now, can we actually make changes to that one?
You can, yes.
Okay.
So the state act gives you the authority to review site plans, and it outlines just generally what you're supposed to do in terms of site plan reviews, but
Okay.
the actual process and the specific standards, they're all your own. So you have a bit of, I don't want to say free rein, but you should make it fit how you want to run.
What was the other one?
well, we're doing 19 and 22 because those are things we don't know anything about. So I guess my question is, generally, like, we kind of have one site plan application that will cover land split, rezoning, SALU, site plan application, or sketch plan. And it just depends on what it is, which part you use.
Sure.
The concern is that it's, we're not very clear on which one is, not that the commission isn't clear, but if a resident looks at that, they don't understand which one they need.
Sure.
They don't know. So in your opinion, is it better to have each individual thing out on its own, specifically described, each have their own little section with their own little application, or to lump some together, pull, that's more that was our biggest issue with this, is some felt ours was not able to be understood by the average person.
And there was also items on the application that weren't called for in the ordinance, and there were things in the ordinance that aren't asked for in the application, so the paperwork doesn't align with the ordinance. And at the last meeting, I was the one with all of the suggestions, and I went and, I don't know if you saw them, went to several, 2 villages, 2 townships, and 2 cities, and got examples of what other people do. And there's a lot of variations on stuff, and I would hope if we were in a position to streamline it, that we do that. Some of the cities, like Sterling Heights does it in 2 pages, and we have, I don't know, 12 pages. You know, the townships seem to have the same thing. They sort of have the same, both have the same approach, but the Village of Romeo does it in a couple of pages with 1 document. It's like
That was the one I liked, and I think that's the one I didn't get printed out.
I would, if it's possible for us to do that, I think it would go a long way in making people understand the process easier, and give us a chance to align our requests with our ordinance, that sort of thing. Which one did you want? I have them all printed if you need it.
I thought I had them all too. But Romeo was the one that I liked.
Yeah, I mean, it's short and sweet. It's got, I don't know that people would even go and look through all the charts and all the dots and all, all the stuff. I mean,
That would be
there's like
Bruce.
4 or 5 pages of that. That's,
Yeah, that Richmond one is kind of lengthy.
No, Bruce.
Oh, is it?
Bruce was one that was.
Yeah, Bruce is big, Richmond's pretty lengthy.
that was a little harder to read than some of the other ones.
Yeah.
But the content was, I thought the approach was a lot like the Armada Township. A lot of similar, like boilerplate kind of.
No, I understand why they did what they did. It was just if you got someone, like you said, coming in from off the street, trying to fill it out, they're gonna go in a panic mode, toot sweet, so.
So I guess maybe one place to start would be to define what the different things are. What's the difference between a site plan or a sketch plan?
Right.
And our ordinance just says that one is more detailed than the other.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
I get that, and I get we don't want to be specific because then it limits us, but too vague and nobody understands.
Sure.
So,
And as you found out, there's no one way to skin the cat, right? So there's, some people have an individual application for everything. So you've got, you have 6 specific
This is
reviews on your application, and some people will do 6 individual applications. Personally, I think that's overkill. That's too specific, because it becomes cumbersome on staff to handle all these applications, and I don't mind the idea of having all your land splits and combinations and boundary realignments in one application, and then your items that come to the planning commission on their own application. And then the third category would be maybe the ZBA, a variance or an interpretation would be a separate application.
well,
'cause
ZBA we have its own application for a
You've
ZBA.
got it
Currently,
today,
correct.
yeah.
Currently we do, yes.
That being said, the base information for every single one of the applications is the same. It's ownership, it's property description, it's parcel ID, those sorts of things. So, you have a luxury with Becky here having done this. I don't know how long you've done it, but I can tell you all the processes in and out. If you get hit by a bus tomorrow, we've got to make it
Correct.
simple for somebody else to come in and pick it up too. So
Or she retires.
I already told her she couldn't do that. All of that is a long way to say that I don't know that there's a best way. I don't know that I have a favorite. I think of all that I've seen, it'd be down to those 3. Split them into land issues, planning commission issues, and ZBA issues.
So the land is the SALU and the,
Land,
No,
you said land split.
it would just be a lot split and a combination in one application.
like I don't, for the normal schmo out there applying to planning, I don't think they really care if it's a sketch plan or a site plan, or they just want it to be clear and concise, right? So that, we certainly don't wanna make them jump through hoops they don't need to jump through, but, I didn't see a whole lot of value in having those different levels like that, because it wasn't clearly defined and people didn't understand, we didn't understand.
For my own purpose, give me an example of a sketch plan. Because in all the years I've done it, we've never done a sketch plan.
On the application,
What would your example be of a sketch plan?
this is a sketch plan to me.
But the application, a sketch plan application, what would?
No, so that's a sketch, so you're saying that on our application, we would have
We are
checked,
including both then.
we would have checked sketch plan instead of site plan?
Mm-hmm.
See, so we use that term interchangeably then, because we just call them all site plan applications.
But your ordinance has them separate.
And that
Or-
was, that.
Well, okay, your ordinance in practice is reviewing them the same, right? They're both coming to the planning commission, it
Right.
doesn't matter. You're using the actual information that you're collecting based on the
A sketch.
intensity of the use and things like that. Yeah, this is a sketch, right? So this is what I think your ordinance intends a sketch plan review to be. And typically, something like this doesn't come before a planning commission in most places. It's a staff review. That being said, you don't have a zoning administrator on staff that's, ready and available to do these sorts of reviews.
willing, don't forget the willing.
So, your site plan application could literally just say a site plan application, and then,
Sketch could be out of there.
right, you could get rid of the sketch terminology in terms of the checkbox that somebody is filling out as they submit the application. But your ordinance is really good in terms of defining what types of things require a sketch plan versus a full site plan. And so you have an opportunity where you could kind of restructure the application to say, if you're doing one of these things, here are your requirements that you have to submit with the application. And if you're doing anything above and beyond that, here's the other list of things that you've got to submit.
So, like, I think you were here when we did the automotive place when you first came into town.
Yeah.
That was major, so that would be a site plan.
Yeah.
But something simple like this,
Reoccupancy or
that
home
Robbie sketch,
occupation,
those are all
those
sketch.
are all sketch things. Yeah. And you've got, so it's kind of backwards in the ordinance in terms of my mind. So 1809 is required information for site plans. And 1810
Right.
is site plans and sketch plans, and 1811 is all plans. Almost, just from a readability standpoint, they're backwards.
That's what we had on the notes too, was why didn't this one come first?
1811 should be, hey, if you're even thinking of coming before the village, these are the things you've got to do. If you're doing a sketch plan, 1810 applies, and if you're going above and beyond a sketch plan, 1809 applies to you.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
In how it doesn't make sense today, but
Flip the sequence.
yeah, just the sequence flip. The information I think is spot on what you're requiring for each one. I don't have any issue with that.
So on that same line, currently we have land splits or combines on the same application. Would we create another section for land splits under that same site plan review? Would we create another section 19 or whatever? Would we not?
Well,
I don't see where it held anywhere where people have to tell me what to provide for us.
on a land division,
Yeah.
right, which is, and I can give you some good examples because they don't need grading, they don't need utilities, they don't need landscaping, they don't need lighting, they don't, you know, there's a whole host of things in that 1809, 1810, 1811 that just simply don't apply. So, quite honestly, it's a chance to say, you need these 6 or 7 things. for a
And we
lot
could do
split.
that with the application itself.
Mhm.
We don't need it specifically in here.
Right, right.
Okay.
Now, what I don't know, do you have you have to have a subdivision ordinance in your regulatory ordinances
Mhm.
somewhere.
We do.
And in that ordinance is likely to be a short list of requirements for land divisions.
Probably. I
Likely.
haven't read
So,
that one quote.
Yeah, and I haven't, I deal with them so infrequently here, I don't know either, but in almost every ordinance, that list is there, and it's short, it's 7 items maybe. And those are the things that could go on that land division application.
Gotcha, okay, okay.
But it's gonna be things like property lines, setbacks, structures on the property and within 50 feet of the property lines. What else? You might require utility poles, things like that to be shown on there, but that's about it.
Okay, all right, I can look at that one.
And if not, I'll share a good example. I've got one in my head.
Okay. Well, because I think this one's gonna, this chapter specifically might take us a couple of, let's come up with a few ideas, let's put it together, see what we like, and then tweak it a little more. I don't
Sure.
think this is one we're gonna read through once we're done.
Right.
No, probably not. Probably not. But I will say, so I read it and I didn't see a lot of, actually I had one note on the entire chapter. Like, to me, it's pretty straightforward in terms of what you need and pretty standard in terms of the things that you're requiring and the standards that you're reviewing site plans by. I think it's pretty good in that regard. Can I
Go ahead.
tell you the only thing that I
Yes.
pointed out
Please.
was 1803, so your informal review of conceptual plans.
Okay.
The times that I've come to hang out with you guys and you've had things like this on the agenda, you're really, really good at working with the applicant and getting all that information out of them and discussing any issues, and if they've got some open things, you tell them to come back next meeting and they address them and you're done. You're doing the intent of this conceptual plans as part of your site plan review. Most places will do a conceptual review completely outside the scope of a meeting. It'll be, you meet with the building official, you meet with the zoning official, or the planner, or the engineer, or all of them if need be. You're hammering out those issues before it even gets to planning commission. So,
And I will say that Ben did a really good job of doing that a lot. He would talk to them and tell them, you don't have this, don't come, you don't have this, don't come, especially on the bigger projects.
okay.
Mainly because our ordinances allow them to come twice and then they have to pay if they keep coming after that, so.
Oh,
So
That's why.
the fee that they pay gives them 2 meetings at no additional cost. Plus, ideally, we would like them here as little as possible. We would like them to have, so Ben did a better job of that only because that was Ben,
who he was,
you
yeah.
know.
Who he is.
I try when they turn stuff in, if there's stuff missing, to tell them, get it to me before the meeting so that they don't have to come back. And for the most part, most of them have
I think so.
had what they, or, because now we do an agenda 2 weeks ahead of time.
Mhm.
So if these guys see something missing, they email me back and I contact them and say, hey, we need this, or
Sure.
there's a question on this. So we're attempting to have them prepared when they get here, but we're not all, we don't have any per se point of contact that does
Yeah.
sit down with them and say, hey, this is what you need.
Those 2 meetings are after they make a formal application, right?
Correct.
So this 1803 allows them to just ask to be on an agenda and hammer some of those items out.
Without making an application.
So in practice, if somebody wanted to get around their 2 free meetings as part of the site plan, they could just cite this section and...
But they'd still have to apply for,
apply to be on an agenda as a concept.
well, that's what I mean, that before they could open, they'd still have to actually go through the application process.
Well,
Would they not?
does it say it's,
Not really.
the reform review is to discuss the standards, applicable standards, not,
Mhm.
just to discuss it, doesn't say to discuss their actual application.
Comment on the
It's being
project's
already
compliance
turned in.
with the standards and determine the appropriate type of review process.
Which is everything we do after they're here.
Becky's doing half of that in the office, and then the
Mhm.
other half you're talking about here.
Right.
So you're saying we don't need that section? Kind of duplicative of,
If in practice you are allowing somebody 2 meetings anyways, I see it as a workaround. If somebody wanted to press you and really get 4 meetings out of you, they'd say, well, I've got more concept to review.
I see what you're saying, so they
You know?
could get more meetings for not more money.
paying.
Could you order it like you're allowed one informal before applying?
Almost what I would do is rephrase this section to allow staff to make the request to the planning commission for a concept review, because then you've got some form of a gatekeeper, right?
Okay.
You've got the staff that can look at it and say, okay, I can't answer this as staff, I really need the planning commission to give you some guidance before you apply. And that's when you can say, okay, I'm staff and I want to put this on the agenda so that the planning commission can review this conceptually. And that way you have a layer of protection instead of people just asking, hey,
Gotcha.
I'm entitled to another concept review because there's no
Gotcha.
limit in the ordinance. So I like that as a means to address this, and you're still giving anybody the chance to ask questions or go through the concept without cheating the system.
Gotcha. We've not had anybody use that, but it's there to be used.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, but really that was the only comment I had in this whole section. I don't have a lot of issue with it, so if you have specific questions, though, by all means.
Well, we might have more specific questions. Like I said, I think it's going to be a case of we're actually going to have to take the time to rewrite our applications and what do you want them to have, and then maybe ask you to review to make sure they're complete before
Sure.
we make it a thing.
Sure.
that's a good idea.
Yeah, I think that would be the best.
So,
Get through the rest of the zoning ordinance and then, concentrate hard on that application and
how old is that
We don't wanna go through
application?
the
Do you know?
application when we're-
Pardon me?
Don't know.
Since the beginning of planning commission.
Well, that's what I wonder. You mentioned that some of the things that it's asking for aren't in the ordinance, or there's some
Right.
incongruity there. It's
Yeah.
probably because you have the
It
major
needs to
zoning
be
ordinance
other-
rewrite in like
Right.
03, right?
Right.
And so
It's older than that.
it's older than the ordinance.
it's probably from the 1985
Yeah.
zoning ordinance.
See, so
Yeah.
And we don't wanna work on
No,
doing that while we're doing this,
doing what?
redoing the application.
Well-
While we're in this chapter.
Well, at the very
We
least,
will, but we
2016.
won't do that with them here. We'll go.
No, I understand
Yeah,
that.
no, I would do
oh,
them
because that's when the
together.
fee schedule is updated.
I would look
Well, I'm
at,
looking at the header of
rephrase
the page,
something
so at the
in
very
here.
earliest, sometime in
If we
2016.
need to, rework the application. But, with the planner here, I would go over site condominiums
Yes,
and,
absolutely. Does anybody else got anything with 18? All right,
any specific questions.
let's move into 19.
And truly, we had you here for 19 and 20 because none of us know anything
Under
about any of
nothing.
either one of these. So we wouldn't even know if there's something we should amend to be current.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
I mean, we could find grammar, but we're not gonna find,
Yeah, which you may. I didn't read it for grammar, but so in general, the requirements of a site condo are defined by a state act, and most people think of condos as the actual building form, right? Like a row of townhouses or an apartment style complex, but really it's trying to define, the state act is trying to define a form of ownership. Almost every new development that you come across these days is done as a site condominium rather than a platted subdivision. Most of what you have in the city, the older homes and the traditional blocked pattern, are done by old plats. But everybody does a site condo these days for a couple of reasons. So it puts approval authority with the municipality rather than plats have to be reviewed not only by the municipality but at the state level. So you send it up to the state plat board and they take, typically a plat is going to take you about 3 years to get full approval by the time you go through the municipality and the state and back and forth and back and forth. A site condominium approval can be done as fast as you can process it, as fast as you define it in your ordinance, and as fast as the county can record all of the parcels themselves. So that's really what it is. It's a form of ownership rather than a building form. So, Becky, do you know, is the newer, I always forget the name of the subdivision over on the east side of the village.
the Fritz, or Native Meadows, or whatever it is.
Yes, Native Meadows. Was that done as a plat or a site condo, do you know?
I don't know, it's before me.
Don't know, okay.
I'm sure it wasn't flat. I was gonna say,
It was a
sure it
plat.
wasn't site
Okay.
condo.
So, well, I asked because it's got modern street form with the cul-de-sacs and everything like that, but just as easily if someone were to apply for that today, they would apply as a site condominium. As I said, it's a lot faster. It accomplishes the same thing for the developer and for the municipality, just a lot cleaner. So.
But they're still considered homes, not
They're
condominiums
still,
when they go to sell it.
yeah, the lots, yes. So you can do a condo as either a lot, like a traditional, 100 by 120 lot, or you can do a condo that is a portion of a building, more of an apartment style is the condo, and that person owns wall to wall, and then they share all the hallways and they share the utility connections and things like that. Or you can do them or you get condos that are just the footprint of a house, and then the yard is a common element to the entire subdivision too. So those are kind of the three classifications: is a portion of a building, the building only, or the building and a square of land around it, rectangle of land around it. So that's the purpose. It's all ownership verification, or how you split up your land for ownership is the intent of site condos. Okay, so with that all in the background, this section of your ordinance is going to be applied with either traditional site plan review or with a plan development, with a special land use. Yeah, those are really where it's going to be applied with. You'll never really apply the site condominium section of your ordinance as a standalone.
Gotcha.
Okay, that's why when you read through this, it harkens back to your site plan approval, preliminary approvals and final approvals. So it says, you've got to have elements of your site condo documents intact when you get preliminary site plan review, and then you've got to have agreements and other things at final site plan review. The state act defines what has to be prepared in getting a site condo approved. So it's things like your homeowners association documents, it's maintenance agreements for things that are common in the area. What else? It is Exhibit Bs, which are the survey documents that define the limits of all of the condominium units themselves.
Responsibilities, like.
Responsibilities, yeah.
Roof is association, not owner.
Yeah, exactly. So it's forcing a developer to set up all of the administrative documentation as you're going through an approval of a site plan. That's how I view it in its most simplistic form. It's a way to track, because that developer then they're setting up the either LLC or other incorporated unit at the state level to eventually transfer over to the homeowners. They're setting up the master deeds, which is going to be all of the rules and regulations. That's typically where you'll get you can't have a fence. You know, your dogs have to be on a run. You can't have
Purple flowers.
you can't. Yeah, exactly. Your lighting has to be. What's the heat unit of lighting? You know, all those silly things that we think of and we associate with condos. Those all go in the master deed, which is a requirement for this.
So as ours is written, is there something that needs to be changed to keep it current? Is it, I don't want to say vague enough, but is it not too specific, but specific enough for us?
It is, it's about spot on. Like, my notes are not truly content needs to change. It's, let's address some, let's clarify a process here, things like that. It's not anything, because as I mentioned, it's defined by the state, so all of the things that are required for a site condo you're doing here, those haven't changed in any substantive fashion in recent years, so you're in good shape in terms of this article.
So ours says by the Condominium Act, Public Act 59 of 1978, is that still the one that's referenced?
That's still the current one, yep, they have amended that, so if anything you would say as amended for that.
Okay. So what are some of your notes?
Okay, so my notes, I've got in section 1903D that talks about final condominium site plan review. So, as I mentioned, this follows along right with your site plan approvals for complex projects where you have a preliminary and a final approval.
Right.
But this item D says the final condominium plan shall include all the information required for the approved preliminary plan, so on and so forth. Approval of the final condominium site plan shall be contingent upon approval of a development agreement, but nowhere in that section does it say who is making the approval of the final condo docs.
Oh.
Now, it doesn't say that there, it says it elsewhere. The answer is your village council is doing the approval. So we need to work in somewhere in that section that the village council needs to be the final approval body. And we know that because in section 1905, in the introduction, it says that final approval of the development agreement is the village council.
Okay.
Okay, so that's one. Let's see. The other thing, and I don't know that there's a specific spot for it, Alicia and I can figure out where it needs to go, but this section hints that it is done at the same time as the actual site plan, but it doesn't come right out and say it, that you can do it concurrently. I much prefer that it says you can do this at the same time You can do the public hearings that are noted here at the same time as you do a public hearing for the site plan. You can get approvals from either the planning commission or the village council at the same time. I hate when an ordinance dances around something. I'd rather have it come right out and say it.
Yeah. Well, because you look at it and you wonder, is it really gonna be, just take all that much longer now? Because I gotta do this, 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 and this,
Right.
and then I
Yeah.
gotta do this, this,
Yeah.
this, and this.
Exactly. And in practice, a developer is not gonna do things like draft a master deed and all of the agreements and things like that that they have to do until they know that they have some semblance of an approval, which is what they get at preliminary site plan.
Right.
So it falls right in line there. They're gonna seek preliminary site plan approval, and that approval will also include some of the things that are defined here for preliminary approval. And then you can finalize things at the end. And it is common, the sections that you have in here that require administrative review by either your planner or your attorney or your engineer, all those things that are listed in this section as administrative approvals. That's absolutely common, and I wouldn't expect this body to sit and review master deeds and go through and say, you know, because you don't look at these things every day. Your attorney does look at these things every day, so you want him to weigh in on that and give you the positive affirmation that you need to move forward. So,
Okay.
other than that, again, I'm pretty happy with this. It's short and sweet and has the information you need in there, and it doesn't conflict with the state act.
Anybody got anything they want to add to 19? Questions for Brian?
No.
Okay. So we'll look at Article 20, the plan developments.
So what's the difference between this and the last thing?
Okay, I mentioned you're gonna have a site condo review and set of documents associated with a site plan, and you're likely gonna have it the exact same way with a PD. So that's gonna be the ownership form that anybody pursuing a plan development these days is going to do. They're not gonna split land in the traditional platted sense anymore. So you would have somebody pursuing all of the elements in Article 19 as they're pursuing a plan development. Oh, I just misplaced myself here. The plan development is trying to accomplish something similar to your site plan review, in that it's going to lay out the overall site. It's going to define any specific site elements that you have, landscaping requirements, parking requirements, any of those sorts of things. But what a plan development does, it almost functions as a rezoning, because it allows a developer to specify a list of uses that can happen within the boundaries of that application. So that's really where it...
So someone would do this if they want to change the use of a particular zone.
Yeah, if they want to change the use, or if they want to mix the uses, if they want, say they are proposing a predominantly residential development, and maybe they want a corner store that's still part of that whole approval, they would use this plan development mechanism instead of a traditional site plan for that neighborhood, because this will allow them to get their site plan approval for the commercial use and the residential use all at the same time. And it kind of benefits the village in that you have some control over how a commercial use plays with the residential uses, or, you know, the adjacent issues that you have with compatibility a lot of times, where, you know, you've got a use that is loud, it's too loud, or headlights go into
Or you could
somebody's
restrict
backyard.
hours.
You
like
can do
the
all of
8 to 8,
that.
like their stores.
Yeah, you can do all of that. The plan development is kind of negotiation mechanism. I know that you won't find that verbiage in the state act at all for plan developments, but it really is. It does allow you to maybe give a little bit to a developer, but also get something back, and that you're protecting things that are important to you, maybe giving on things that aren't as important to you, but that maybe it makes the project viable for the developer, but you get connections to trails or additional sidewalks or that sort of thing.
So in a plan development, we're not necessarily bound by the requirements in the other part of the ordinance as far as trees or buffering or?
Well, you are, those are the basis for
but
that
that's
plan,
one of the give and take
but
things?
you can give and take on all those sorts of things, yeah. It's also intended, so you've got section 202B, for example, talks about uses. And it says the basis for the PD is the underlying zoning. So if I'm going to propose a PD on residentially zoned property, this has got to be a primarily residential use. And it allows some commercial things that get scattered in, but you can't say, I want to do a planned development, I want it to be all commercial and...
In a residential area.
Yeah, exactly,
Okay.
exactly. In that specific instance, I keep going back to residential and then sprinkle in some commercial, because that's likely what somebody would propose in the village. You have under B 2002B3, the second paragraph, you have a limitation to the amount of non-residential uses that you could have in a residential development. So you're limiting it to 3% of the gross floor area of residential land. Is it floor area? Gross area of residential uses. That 3% is fairly low. I don't have a number for you what that should be, but it seems really low. Because I use the example of your minimum area to qualify for a planned development in most cases is 5 acres. You've got to have 5 acres of contiguous land. So I'm thinking about 80% of any plot of land is going to be for residential development. You're going to get about 80% of that land will be for residential uses. The rest is going to go towards stormwater detention or road right-of-way or common area plantings, things like that. So you're down to 4 acres of residential space. 3% of that is about 6,000 square feet of commercial space. So that gets you maybe a 7-Eleven,
Right.
maybe a 7-Eleven and a half. You know, so you're not getting a ton, and maybe that's okay, but I do want to, maybe you and I can run some numbers on what's appropriate there. Just seemed really low, that number. I don't know why I jumped to that standard specifically, but in terms of the overall process that you have defined here, I don't see any major issues with it. It's good because you have several reviews by the Planning Commission and the Village Council. You have actually more protection in your ordinance because you have 2 public hearings that are part of this process, both at the preliminary phase and the final phase. So most places will only do 1 public hearing at the preliminary phase, and then they do all of their cleanup work at a normal meeting, and the public doesn't get a second notice. So I kind of like that you have that in terms of protecting your residents or giving your residents surrounding these a bit more notice and a bit more input. On the flip side, it does potentially mean you have to face the public twice if it's a project that you don't like, but that's why you get paid the big bucks.
That's
is to
right.
take that of the action. So
Power to the people.
exactly. So, so I think the process is good. My other, let's see, got a couple other comments. So in section 20.04 B1, so your plan development ordinance says you can't use a plan development to get more density than you would get in underlying zoning. So if somebody has 5 acres, and going back to my 5 acre example, if it's quarter acre lots, you know, they're gonna get about 16 lots on there just under a traditional zoning plan. This plan development is not meant to give somebody 20 units because they use this. However, you're giving them in the section B1 an option on how they should be calculating how many units they're allowed to have. And I don't like that. I want to tell them to prepare a plan of existing zoning, what they could get today without this extra special plan development mechanism, so that we have a set in stone number for how many units that they're supposed to have. And that's what this parallel plan is that you have under 1B. That's parallel plan. Sometimes that's called literally as an existing zoning plan. So that's really what that is. I would prefer to have that be the only mechanism for determining the maximum permitted density on a plan development.
Well, I'll tell you, because this has been interpreted to read in the past. It didn't come to fruition, but it was interpreted to read to give somebody the ability to have more parcels.
Well, there is one provision in there that can give somebody a density bonus, but not by right. But my point is, if we're giving somebody an option on how they calculate density, that leaves the village up to, or it leaves you as the planning commission and the village council, they've got to determine, well, how dense should this thing really be? And that's not a situation you want to get into if somebody's proposing something controversial. You want to know, this is the way, this is the only number that you can give us.
Keeps yourself out of trouble that way.
Yep. So I like striking out A entirely there and just keeping B. It leaves a lot less room for you to get yourselves in trouble.
I agree.
Alright, moving forward to, gosh, this keeps jumping around on me. 202C2 talks about amount and quality of open space. So it says if somebody proposes a plan development to you, they've got to dedicate at least 20% of the site for open space, which tends to go towards landscape buffering, or it can go towards recreational amenities if somebody wants to put a park or something in there. They can do that. The other requirement you have here is that active recreation space. They have to provide active recreation of 1,500 square feet per dwelling in the residential component. It seems a little bit light to me, and when I write a plan development ordinance, I like to say that they have to provide that recreational space in an amount that is equal to the area of lot that they are proposing to downsize. So what I mean by that is, with this mechanism, we're giving them the option to maybe decrease lot size, smaller than what you would get in traditional zoning. But if they're going from, again, I'm just going to throw things out there, a 15,000 square foot minimum lot under traditional zoning, if they are proposing something like 10,000 square feet per lot, I like to require them to have that difference, the 5,000 square feet, be the space that gets provided for recreational area. So that forces more of a balanced trade-off. It forces them to take less in terms of creating small lots, but if they feel like it's a better product, or maybe makes things more viable for them, that's great, but let's get something out of them and
Right.
give our residents some more recreational space. So that's how I'd suggest changing that.
I know you're gonna be able to rewrite all this here.
I'm just gonna say,
No, she's gonna do it verbatim.
Exactly.
We're good.
Our whole orders book is gonna say per Brian.
Per planner, per planner, per planner.
Don't say that, then I'm gonna get sued personally. Instead of firm.
No.
Okay, other than that, that same page, protection of open space, you have the dedicated open space shall be permanently set aside and conserved through an irrevocable conveyance acceptable to the village. It shouldn't just give them the option of conveyance. Conveyance means, in my mind, that they are giving the village something, which ends up being potentially a burden on the village if you don't have staff to maintain whatever they're giving you or whatever the case may be. So we want to give them the option to, okay, you can have an open space amenity, a park or something like that, but let's define whether it is an HOA amenity or whether it's a village amenity or whether you want to give it to a land conservancy, wherever it may be. So I want it to be not only a conveyance, but it could be a dedication or an easement that we're protecting that open space with. So that's not really changing anything in terms of concept or regulation other than giving you some more flexibility on the way to preserve open space.
So my question's gonna be, and I don't know that we'll ever get one of these, they do an open space that they say is the HOA maintains. Would they have the right to not allow their village residents to use that? They made it a park.
The way you do that during the review, and this would come up in their master deed, they would have to define that in their master deed, that the village is reviewing and theoretically approving as part of a final site plan. So if you didn't like that they are proposing it to be neighborhood residents only, you could have them strike that from their master deed.
So, they said it was HOA and they're building it, do they have to have specific wordage saying who can use it?
Typically they don't. But they would have to put that in a master deed or a bylaw for the association, which, the way that this is written, you have approval authority over that master deed and bylaw. So you can tell them, if they propose...
We can say not to do that.
Right, if they propose, hey, we only want the residents of this community that we're building to use this, you can say, well, that's not in the best interest of the community.
So that would have to be verbiage somewhere, it would have to go through us.
Exactly.
Not just...
Exactly.
Okay, with HOA it's not just, yeah, that's all part of it.
Right.
Okay.
Now, typically like I mentioned before, the bylaws and the master deed are just administratively reviewed, and you'll get, when the project goes to council or it comes to planning commission, typically you'll get a report from the attorney or some correspondence that the attorney signed off on this. He might be okay with the language, and you can at that point say, hey, how are you going to maintain this park area, or who's going to be able to use this park area? And if you don't like their answer, then that's the point to change it before it gets approved. I don't know that I review a lot of bylaws and master deeds, and I don't know that I've seen one in maybe 6 or 7 years where anybody's proposed restrictions on who can use it. It's not that common. So not that it can't be in there, but it's at least a question worth asking if somebody proposes something to you. That was my last comment in here. It's still up to date. It's still in line with the Zoning Enabling Act. There's nothing funky, I would say, or anything that gives me pause, so. Has anybody had a chance to read through this one and have any specific questions or?
We've all attempted
I mean,
it.
this
Read
this
through it,
stuff will,
yes.
this stuff will put you to sleep. It's insane. So, and you're likely to get somebody proposing something so infrequently that
Well, we really only have one spot unless we, expand, unless we, what's that word I'm looking for?
yeah,
Annex.
Annex, yeah, unless we annex more property, we really only have the one spot left to
yeah.
put anything like this.
The only other thing that somebody could do is purchase up a whole bunch of contiguous land and
Gotcha.
propose to tear everything down and start over. But
Well, will they be hung?
well, in most instances, so I could see somebody using a PD instead of the overlay that we just created for some of the industrial uses that are defunct.
Could be, yeah,
They
I could see that, yeah.
But I don't know. The way that we wrote that ordinance is actually similar in concept to this.
Right.
Well, in fairness, now that you've explained some things to us,
Yeah, it
and
makes
we
it
might
little-
go back and reread something, and we could end up with questions after, but
Sure.
we honestly didn't understand any of it to
No.
begin with, so.
Is there anything you want to add? I know I've been talking for God knows how long now, so.
No, you did great.
Any questions about the concept of a plan development or like when it might be used or anything like that?
I pretty much had the same line of thought that she had. It's like, I'm not sure where it would actually fall in,
Yeah.
except for, like you said, there's that one little area.
You're talking at the end of the meadows.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
How big is that area?
I don't remember because I think it's like 13 acres maybe.
The crosses?
The Fritz.
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
When they were they had some idea like
They did,
5 or
and
6 years ago, and
Not even quite that long ago, but he wanted to put way too many places in there.
that's right.
And he still wants to put way too many places in there. He wants us to give up the farm so he can put up that many places in there.
Well,
So,
yeah.
Okay, anybody got any more questions for Brian? Well, we really appreciate you both coming out here because we had no clue as to what we were looking at these two chapters.
It's not fun material. Like it's just not. It's
Well, those two were really hard to get through.
yeah.
the likelihood of us coming across something like that is very slim, but we
Yeah.
want the ordinance to still.
Was there a point? Were you raising your hand or?
No.
Oh, okay, I just saw your hand move.
Oh my God.
And you will be open to us reworking our applications and stuff and reviewing those after we do
Please.
that?
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
Yeah.
perfect.
Okay, so we are finished with ordinance review. Nobody's got anything?
I'm good.
Okay. Again, I'm really glad you guys are here.
Good. We're happy to be here. You need to
Okay.
come more often.
So, yes, that would be awesome.
Well, now that we moved it to the third Monday.
Oh, that makes it easier, I think.
Invite us anytime. Yeah,
Okay.
I had a standing meeting conflict, and I think we should do two on the first. So
Yeah, me
this
too.
works well. Yeah, there you go. Perfect.
Okay, so we are moving from there into DDA business. And we are adopting the budget package.
Yes.
I thought we just did this.
We prepared. Council
Prepared.
accepted.
Okay,
Now we
adopt.
have to adopt.
so now we're adopting. Okay, budget did it with this.
Something with the minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, I used it for everything.
All right, so as Becky said, this has, we've already gone over this. We have sent it to Village. Village has sent it back to us for adoption on the DDA budget. Yeah, 23-24 fiscal year.
Yep.
So this is everything we've already reviewed and gone over.
Correct. They changed nothing, they accepted it.
So we just need a motion.
Who wants to go? All right, I'll make a motion to adopt the 2023-2024 DDA budget.
With an ending, fiscal year ending balance of $31,021.80.
All right, hold on, that was on my notes.
$31,021.80.
GT.
Okay.
With an ending balance of $31,021.80.
Support.
All those in favor?
Wait, I think we have to do a roll call, don't we? Yes.
Oh,
Roll call.
you have to roll call vote this one.
Belkey,
Yes.
Shaw, Katie Jasek,
Yes.
Grand,
Yes.
Patterson.
Yes.
Do you want me to explain the next one too?
Yeah.
The next thing we need is a motion to allow the treasurer, since planning commission doesn't meet every month and sometimes the bills, as you saw, the bills are very limited for there, don't always give us a 3 or 4 week lead time to pay anyways. So this motion would allow we need a motion to allow the treasurer to pay any DDA bills listed in the budget when they come in.
So,
This goes straight to Ann then, right?
Right, they'd come in and would write the check, and then I'll give them to Christie for the following meeting. She could just mention that, you know, the bond
This was
payment
paid
was
or that was
made,
paid.
or the interest payment.
I don't see an issue with that.
to the motion.
Mhm.
So I motion to allow the treasurer to pay the bills as they come in,
Yep, to pay DDA bills.
DDA bills as they come in.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, well, I have nothing under reports, other than to say, I'm very glad to have the planners here. Had a good meeting. And I think we are going to stick with just the 19 and 20. We'll kind of go over that together. 18, 19, and 20, kind of go over that together. Look at all of those, come up with if we have any new questions for the planners. And see what Becky comes up with for wording on the changes.
I'm gonna grade how you do.
If anyone has anything else to add during the reports. Okay, then there's one final motion.
Make a motion to adjourn at 8:26.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are done.